Oh, hey, it's good to see you again. Thank you for tuning in to this special episode of See It Again Cinema, where I list the 7 films that I most want to see again. Now, if you're looking at this screen, you can see there are 10 films. I'm going to start right off the bat with 3 honorable mentions. Let's go alphabetically. Guardians of the Galaxy was a very satisfying conclusion to James Gunn's sci-fi comedy action series. It's the first Marvel Cinematic movie I've seen in the theaters since Endgame, and I'm just glad he was able to return and complete the story that he wanted to tell. Second honorable mention, The Holdovers, directed by Alexander Payne. This was a fun film to see, and I've heard it gets better with repeated viewings, so I might have to give it another shot. I love Payne's work, particularly Election, Citizen Ruth, and Sideways. The guy just knows how to tell a good family drama. Third honorable mention goes to Priscilla. I love Sofia Coppola's body of work, and this film works as a great double feature to last year's Elvis. I might rewatch this as a 1-2 Elvis Presley punch. So, wow, I can really see why Austin Butler got so addicted to speaking in that voice. Let's get to the top 7. Barbenheimer, directed by the Zeitgeist. You know, I'm lumping these two together because I think in popular imagination, they'll always be inextricably linked. In the months leading up to July 21st, I was fascinated by the news coverage, the promotional, behind the scenes drama about the producers of Oppenheimer wanting Greta Gerwig to move her date so that they weren't on the same time. And even though they tried to, they couldn't because of Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. A lot of people look at the synergy of how these two films seem like such opposites of each other, but there are actually quite a lot of similarities which other people have gone into. I just have to say it was fun to see something that couldn't be manufactured. That synergy between two very entertaining, thought-provoking, and in some ways controversial films that I thought was lots of fun. So, number 7, Barbenheimer. Number 6, Dream Scenario, directed by Christopher Borgli. I'm not familiar with this director or the screenwriter. I just kind of heard a little bit about the premise, and those of you who love this channel know I think Nick Cage is a fascinating actor. He's made some wonderful work, some not so great work, and some work I'll probably never see. But Dream Scenario was a ton of fun. The premise is somewhat Charlie Kaufman-esque. The style and tone of the film is in that neo-horror genre that A24 is doing so well. And I thought it had a lot to say about our current times, whether it's cancel culture and academia. It was unpredictable. It was fun. I found the ending to be oddly moving. So check out Dream Scenario. What will be number 5? Number 5, Napoleon, directed by Ridley Scott. I'm quite a Ridley Scott fan. I own almost all of his films, and he is one of the world's masters at shooting massive battle scenes. And I know some historians took issue with some of the way he focused or how he depicted Napoleon. But I think what a lot of people are missing is that this historical military genius who was flawed, like all historical figures are flawed, I think is more of an opportunity for him to present the idea of a great military leader, someone who was emperor and just wouldn't let anything stop him from achieving what he wants. I think this film is largely viewed through a Trumpian lens as a way to critique the kind of people who somehow, even today in the 21st century, want some kind of leader like Napoleon. I found it to be a really great film, and if we get the longer director's cut, like some other Ridley Scott films have done, such as Kingdom of Heaven, I imagine it will be even better than the theatrical cut, because Ridley Scott is not afraid of cutting a film down to make sure that it is financially successful. Number 4, Pinball, The Man Who Saved the Game, directed by the Bragg brothers. Now, you might not have heard of the Bragg brothers before, but this little indie dramedy is got a lot of heart. I saw it last spring when the directors came for an event at the Mary Reepma Ross Theater in Lincoln, Nebraska, and it is a crowd-pleasing, fun, thought-provoking film. It tells a story about how pinball machines were banned and viewed as these terrible devices of vice, and one man who had such a love and an obsession with it that he basically changed the legal fate of pinball. I'm really looking forward to seeing what these two brothers do in the future, because this was a fun film, and I highly recommend you check it out if you get a chance. Number 3, Poor Things, directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. I've heard that Lanthimos' filmography is generally kind of weird and absurdist. The only other film by him I've seen is The Favorite, which I enjoyed quite a bit. This film was really something special. First off, Emma Stone, she goes for it. It's one of the best acting performances I've seen this year of someone who is fearless. Also balanced out with other great acting performances. Willem Dafoe goes for it. That guy is good in everything I've ever seen him in. Surprisingly, Mark Ruffalo has quite an interesting turn. It's kind of like a Victorian version of Ken from the Barbie movie, depicting, certain kinds of attitudes. This film, I had no idea what I was in for when I saw it. It is part gothic horror. It's also, in a certain sense, a romantic comedy. There's just a lot going on, and I had no idea where it was going to go. There's just something about this guy's films that is deliciously stylistically off in all the right ways. The combination of elements that inspired this film, from what I could gather just on the first viewing, is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, David Lynch's The Elephant Man, the bizarre marital politics and sexual frustration of Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, the gothic fairy tale of Tim Burton's Edward Scissorhands, the madcap satirical tone of Michel Gondry's Human Nature. There's also a little bit of Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo with the colors and the men's obsession, the bridge jumping scene, the memory issues, and to bring in all the philosophical elements, I saw Mary Wollstonecraft's Vindication of the Rights of Woman, certain Enlightenment philosophy, some Marxist criticism. Add all this together and you get this bonkers gothic sci-fi comedy that's served up through a Terry Gilliam-esque fisheye lens. Stylistically and thematically, it's the most daring piece of cinema I've seen in a while. I wouldn't say Poor Things is something I would watch with my mom. Sorry, Mom, I know you're cool, but I don't think you'd really dig this movie. Check out Poor Things. It is a wild ride and not like anything else you're going to see this year. Number 2, Killers of the Flower Moon, directed by Martin Scorsese. A few years ago, when I found out that Martin Scorsese's next film was going to be an adaptation of this true crime nonfiction book, which is about the murders of the Osage Indian people and also the origins of the FBI, I ran out, bought the book. It's written by David Gran. Phenomenal read. It's quite a page-turner. It was eye-opening to me because it made me question how I had not heard of this terrible history that had happened so close to where I lived. It's a great book. I highly recommend reading the book first before you watch the film, although it's not necessary. The book is a mystery, a whodunit, but in the film, they make it pretty clear who the killers are. Seeing this film in the theater was a phenomenal cinematic experience. I know a lot of people talked about the 3.5 hour runtime, but what I think is very interesting is people who've read the book felt that it wasn't too long. People who hadn't read the book found that the movie seemed long. And I wondered about this and thought maybe people who've read the book know how good of an adaptation it is. And when a character would show up, it would make someone who is familiar with the story say, oh, okay, so that person is going to do this, and that means that this has to happen. So I recommend seeing this film a second time once you know how the story goes, just to see how well constructed the screenplay is. I know some people think that they wish the film had been focused more on Lily Gladstone's character, Molly Burkhart, and I understand the desire for that. But I think the power of this film is how it uses the star power of Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean, Jack Dawson, all grown up, as this evil killer. I think it makes white audiences, at least my hope is that white audiences will watch this film and just see how brutal and seemingly okay the plunder and the murder and all of the lies that so many of these people committed against the Osage, and see it in a different way and question their own understanding of history. It's a remarkable film. I'm very happy that Lily Gladstone is getting the recognition she deserves, and I look forward to seeing this film again. That brings us to number 1, Asteroid City, directed by Wes Anderson. Now, this remarkable film is the one that I've seen more than any others this year. I saw it twice in the theater. I bought it on Blu-ray and watched it 2 or 3 times with different people. And I even made my own edit of the film, which more about that later. But when I first saw it, I was, like with all of his films, just so impressed with his aesthetic, the control of the camera, the use of music, the performances, the themes, and how it's all woven together in his unique style. But I felt a little cold to it. At first, I was impressed, but not really quite digging it. But with each viewing, I began to think a little bit more about it and find humor and see how all the pieces fit together. I think that this is a remarkable film because it is the first one he began writing during lockdown. And I think a lot of what the film has to say is about what we feel and what we do with grief and loss. And it's a phenomenal ensemble cast. The film that I think is as good as anything he's ever done. And for the record, the film that made me a Wes Anderson film... oh, I got made into a Wes Anderson film. For the record, the film that made me a Wes Anderson fan was The Royal Tenenbaums, although I think his best film is The Grand Budapest Hotel. There you have it, the top 7 best films of 2023. Well, all right, that'll do it for this special episode of See It Again Cinema. Thanks for rewatching. We'll catch you next time. Bye. See it again. See it. Oop, psych. Gotta get one more in here. There's sometimes a film that is so special, it doesn't really fit in ranking because it's in a class of its own. When I think about aging directors like Ridley Scott and Martin Scorsese, and I think about how vital their work is and full of life, it gives me a lot of hope as a creative going forward in the years to come. Think that maybe my best work will be made in my 50s, 60s, 70s. There's another director who released a phenomenal film this year, and I can't even rank it or compare it to anything else. That film is The Boy and the Heron, directed by Hayao Miyazaki. This film is a trip. It is dreamlike, somewhat reminiscent of Akira Kurosawa's Dreams, and oddly moving and quirky and unpredictable, and just has to be experienced. Beautifully animated. If this is the last film Miyazaki makes, what a way to go out. Check it out. Bye. See it again, see it again. Cinema.